Howdy partners, it's your old buddy the Reddit writer. Welcome back to the Reddit Ranch. Come in and sit a spell and listen to the mighty fine tales I gotta tell. Today we'll start with a tale posted by a little lady that wants to know if she'd be a sidewinder if she doesn't boycott her husband's photo shoot when he decided he doesn't want to include her disabled son. Well, I reckon it definitely doesn't exactly make her Mother of the Year, now does it?
AITA for refusing to boycott my husband's party and photo shoot in light of him wanting to exclude my disabled son from it. I'm 42, and my husband of 3 years, who's 48, have a blended family. He has 2 daughters, who are 17 and 10, and I have a daughter who's 11, and a son, who's 14, Ethan. My son has cerebral palsy, but despite being in a wheelchair he is mostly independent and all but one of his grades in school has been an A or B. My husband is a dentist who started his own practice 2 years ago, and has been growing his social media presence. He wanted to showcase his kids/family as part of it. So we have done cute pictures of the girls with cute pink scrubs on sitting in dad chair, stocking up the waiting room with toys, etc. Since the social media accounts have been gaining traction, there's been a lot of drama. His ex was angry that her younger daughter was being tagged in posts that listed Botox as part of the services offered. She also said her 10-year-old could not consent to be featured on a public Instagram the way her older sister could. So my younger stepdaughter was erased from my husband's public accounts. Labor Day is coming up and my husband is throwing a party and doing a photo shoot. My husband wanted to showcase us as a blended family, so I assumed it would be all our kids minus his 10-year-old. However, he told me he wasn't crazy about having Ethan at the party. He does suffer from dysarthria, so his speech can be a bit distorted. However, my husband's major concern is that Ethan can be a bit slow with social cues, and can talk on and on. It's been a bit of an adjustment with regards to my husband and Ethan. Ethan is known as a class clown, most people think he's funny, but my husband complains he doesn't get the jokes. In addition, while my husband has introduced my daughter to a lot of business associates and on social media, but a lot of people don't really know that much of Ethan. My husband said he didn't want a picture with Ethan and people online going, "Wait, who is he?" My husband asked that we send Ethan to his dad's for the party and photo shoot. I asked my ex to take him for the long weekend and he was upset. He said my husband looks down on disabled people, and he's been excluding Ethan. He demanded I say that either both kids are included, or none are. I told him I was not going to threaten to not support my husband at his event or photo shoot. It is his party and therefore his choice, and I wasn't going to ruin his wish to have a blended family presence and picture. My ex said he thinks I'm in some honeymoon period fog, and that he liked my husband at first, but he sees scorn in the way he looks at Ethan. He said, mark his words, that if I didn't stick up for Ethan, he'd be exerting his own parental rights to the fullest extent going forward with regards to both kids. AITA. I wish my husband would invite Ethan, but sometimes 2 people have trouble getting along, and I think that's what's happening here. My husband has countless patients who are sick or disabled. The word scorn is an insult to his character.
Well ma'am, the word scorn is only an insult to y'all's husband's character if it's not true, and I do believe that he looks down on Ethan because of his disability, perhaps even considers him a mite bit embarrassing. And I understand that he has several patients that are disabled, but there is a big difference between Ethan and y'all's husband's patients. He is paid to deal with them. As far as I'm concerned, they should all be included, or none of them should be included. How can he possibly display the fact that he has a blended family if the whole family ain't included? Y'all should always support all your youngings, and you really don't. You seem to be okay with your husband excluding your son. Because of that, you are a sidewinder. Well partners, what do y'all think about this story? Do you think it's okay for her husband to exclude her son to save embarrassment? Or do you think she should just tell him if he's not included, then none of us are? Let me know in the comments. Next we have one by a filly whose ma is coming for a visit, and she wants to use it as an opportunity to get some revenge. Partners, I should point out that I'm putting a trigger warning on this story because it deals with the mistreatment of a child, so if you're not in the right head space to hear it, then by all means, skip to the next one.
AITA if I implemented the same rules regarding food that my mum enforced upon me when growing up. I'm 19, and my mum, who is 40, is coming to see me in 2 weeks for the first time since I started university. Just for some context, my family moved abroad a year ago and I haven't seen any of them since. The distance has given me time to reflect on some of my mother's strange, obsessive behaviors regarding food, and I've since realized that some of her actions were somewhat mistreatment, however I use this term very lightly. To outline the situation, we were never allowed to take food from the kitchen without asking. If we were caught doing so, it was called stealing and we would be shouted at and or sometimes punished. It escalated at some point to locks being placed on the cupboards, a transparent meat lock being placed in the fridge and a camera being installed in the kitchen. She would monitor how many times a day I'd be in the kitchen. If I had been in there too many times she would chastise me, saying that I'm obsessed with food, obsessed with always being in the kitchen and that I have serious food issues. During secondary school, I was never sent to school with a packed lunch, nor was any money put on my card so that I could buy food. At some point I started to cook the family dinners, and the leftovers would always be allocated to my stepdad, whilst the rest of us would go to school with nothing. We would sometimes get takeaways for dinner, but oftentimes my mum and stepdad got takeaway only for themselves, saying that we weren't allowed any. Now, the instance in which I could possibly be the AH is that I plan to treat my mum as she treated me in regard to food when she visits. I told my boyfriend of my plan to enforce these rules, that there will be a curfew for the kitchen, that she is not allowed to take or eat food without permission, and if she does so, I will call her a thief. I was also thinking of ordering food for myself and telling her that she's not allowed any. I honestly just want to show her how ridiculous she is about food, but at the same time I just want to be petty because why not? My boyfriend is telling me that I'd be immature for doing this, and that since my relationship with her is already difficult, I'd be better off taking the high road rather than adding fuel to the flames. My dad and sister also agree. Whilst I can't deny that doing this would be immature, I can't help but feel that she deserves a taste of her own medicine. So AITA. I would like to clarify a couple of things. To all the people who've been calling it mistreatment, I'm unsure of how to feel about that. Like it did hit me at some point that this wasn't normal, but it's not as bad as I was making out. Like I feel like I need to clarify that the situation wasn't as severe as I made it seem. From around age 16 she was less strict, and the locks on cupboards were removed as well as the fridge safe. As I got more financially independent I was able to buy myself food whenever I wanted, even though this annoyed her sometimes. The only time I guess I was starved was at school during lunch. Otherwise I wouldn't call this being starved, I was just somewhat monitored around food. To all the people telling me to cut her off, I find it hard to completely resent her because she is my mother, and I recognize that she has done a lot for me. At the same time, that doesn't excuse her behavior. I've realized that she is a narcissistic parent, so I'm not expecting much, or any accountability from her.
I hate to break it to you, ma'am, but what your mother did was mistreatment. A child should never be sent to school hungry, not to mention, the stuff you said about the kitchen was a mite bit on the extreme side. And what you said about the takeout food, well, let's face it, that's just sidewinder behavior right there. Now, as for the bit of payback y'all's planning, would it make you a sidewinder for doing it? No. But, if you decide to go through with it, be prepared for what will happen next. It'll probably cause a huge fight, she may even decide to go NC with you. Okay partners, what do you think she should do? Should she just let it go, or should she give her ma some of her own medicine? Let me know what you think in the comments. Our next story is from a cowpoke that was rescued by his big sister from nightmarish parents. I should warn y'all, this is a long story, but a very important one. And I do believe this story will also need a trigger warning because it also involves the way the young man and his sister were treated as youngings.
My toxic mother claimed she'll ruin my and my sister's life for cutting her out of it. I told her to go ahead and try. Apparently you get great advice here, so here I am. I'm 28, and my sister is 29. My parents are sadists. I really have no other way to describe them. The most vivid memory I have of my childhood is of my sister's back as she stood in front of me to shield me from my mother. How insane do you have to be to do that crap to your own kids? As for my father, he was a truck driver, so either he was away from home or if he wasn't, then my sister was hiding me around the little nooks and crannies to keep me out of his sight. She was forced to grow up and did everything she could to protect me. I wish nothing but the best for her. The definition of a parent in my head is safety, comfort and warmth. None of those things were provided by my bio dad or mom. My sister was the one who looked after me. She was the only reason I never lost hope in the concept of family. She took odd jobs as a minor to make sure we could pay for our stationery, bought a fourth-hand laptop so she could make some cash online that she transferred to one of her friend's brother's account to get. Every toy, every new shirt, every pencil I had was because of her, so you can guess just how much of parenting my parents actually did. She is just a year older than me. Just 1 year. The only person in my life that ever even tried showing me the way was her. She told me her plan of getting a fully funded scholarship in another state and moving out. Then she'd earn enough to get a small apartment, even just a studio, and once my school was over, she'd get me out, and we'd think of something. That was our plan, but when the day she left came, I really couldn't stop crying. Just the thought of being alone with my mother, or unlikely my father, was terrifying. I had never faced them alone. But when I was 4, my sister had started giving me these little lessons. She'd hide with me and watch our parents, point at their expressions and the smallest of changes in their voices, and told me to avoid them when they made that face or sounded like that. That year without her was the most suffocating. It only made me realize just how protected I really was. It was just a day or two after I graduated that my sister texted me to start quietly packing my bags, and she came to take me away in the middle of the night. That was one bus ride I'd never forget. We moved into a studio she had bought, which really wasn't such a problem for us since we had always had to share a room in the tiny apartment we had lived in growing up. I part-time to make money. Honestly, back then I just wanted to be someone she could rely on. But she was literally the sort of person that even if I put money in her hands, she'd just stuff it in my bag the next day. So everything I made was for me, while everything she made from her freelancing and other night shifts she did was for us. Our parents never reached out, and we spent a decade moving on with our lives. After the first year and a half, we moved into a bigger apartment. That was the first time we each had our own room. But we were so unused to it that we literally slept while watching movies on her laptop in the living room. Neither of us really realized how deep our issues ran till the new friends we'd made pointed out how we never really opened up to anyone and didn't ever even try to find love. It was weird, 'cause I think our subconscious knew we were messed up pretty bad inside, but our conscious never focused on it. It took a while, literally years, for us to date. It took a lot of begging and convincing on my part for my sister to give my now brother-in-law a chance back then. I knew her since we were kids, so it was easy for me to tell that she treated him differently than most. A bit colder even, almost as if she was doing her best to keep him away, and really by that point there was nothing I wanted more than for her to be happy. They worked out so well that just a year later, he proposed, and they had a court wedding with only a few people present. On the other hand, my sister was also the one who pushed me to pursue my crush while my brother-in-law managed how I dressed. Dude literally upgraded my closet in a week. We still lived in that apartment till I graduated and bought a new one with my then GF, now wife. Life was going so well that I think I jinxed it. My wife and sister are both pregnant right now. My sister's due next month, while my wife just found out a week ago that we're a month along. Neither I nor my sister are in contact with anyone from our childhood. We made sure they couldn't find us online either and never posted anything personal just in case. But I recently got a message from my mother berating me for not telling her I was about to become a father. How the hell she found my ID I don't even know. How she found out my wife is pregnant. There's literally no way for anyone besides the two of us to know, 'cause we didn't tell anyone yet. I pretended not to know her and asked her who she was and why she thought she could talk to me that way, and she responded with "I'm your mother." The anger and hatred I felt when I read that line literally poured out as I told her that was a sick joke 'cause my parents were passed. She blew up and told me how much I'd regret saying that, and that she'd get both me and the witch I ran away with, my sister, in trouble we'd never get out of. I told her to go ahead and try. This happened a week ago. Now that I've cooled off and kept it hidden from everyone else, I'm starting to worry about what she could do. I don't want to involve my sister so close to her due date, and I don't want to stress my wife. At this point, I'm just planning on getting my brother-in-law alone tomorrow to talk to him.
Well now son, y'all's sister seems like one hell of a lady. She managed to save her kid brother from true sidewinders. She is a real hero. As for what your ma said, wait a minute, I take that back. She's not a mother. That is a title that needs to be earned, and neither of your parents have earned that title. The title they have earned, well, I reckon I can't say it in mixed company. Anyway, her threat is just that, a mere idle threat. Think about it, what do you think she could actually do to mess up y'all's lives? You, on the other hand, wow, what you could do, especially if you involve the media. I can just see the headline now, "Woman saves her little brother from her monstrous parents." Sounds like Pulitzer material to me. Maybe, you should ask Mommy Dearest what she thinks of the headline. If she has any intelligence at all, she'll back off at that point when she realizes that her and her husband's parenting skills will come to light for the whole world to see. Just a thought. Wow partners, that was a little tough to read, wasn't it? But you know what? It was also very inspiring too. But what do you think? Do you think they have anything to worry about, or do you think their parents are just blowing smoke? Let me know what y'all reckon. Our last story is from a lady that wants to know if it's okay to prevent her daughter from attending her biological pa's wedding to her best friend. Good God citizens, you really need to hear this story. What she has gone through is truly horrifying. Oh, I need to put a trigger warning for this story as well. It involves
AITA for not allowing my daughter to attend my BFF's wedding to her biological father. I know how bad that sounds, and I'll start by admitting this is fully based on my feelings of betrayal, hurt, and disgust. I'm 27, and I have an amazing 12-year-old daughter, we'll call A, and I'm married to the most amazing man in the world, we'll call T. My daughter and I have been living in Japan for the last 9 years, the home country of my husband. I returned to the UK for the first time since leaving this month, August 2023, to meet my nephew. My best friend, R, who's 26, and I have been best friends since we were 3 years old. She has always been my rock through everything, especially when I was pregnant with my daughter. As you can see, I gave birth to my daughter when I was 15. Her biological father, D, who is 33 now, has had no interaction with either of us since the night I got pregnant, nor ever showed an interest, until now. To address the elephant in the room, D SA'd me when I was 15, and he was 21. I come from a very religious family, aka, my father is a deacon, there was no option. However, I absolutely adore my daughter, and do not equate her to that horrible experience. She saved me, and I have spent every day loving her thanks to a lot of support, therapy, and her just being the most loving little sweet peach out there. A few other things to note. She doesn't know the nature of her conception, as how do you explain that to any child under any circumstances? My husband adopted her, and she knows they're not related biologically, but they absolutely adore one another. D gave up all parental rights in a plea deal for a lesser sentence. Now, on to the main thing. I came back to the UK to meet my nephew, but booked to stay for a few weeks to visit my family and friends, but it was all a surprise. No one except my mum knew we were coming over. It was very fun, and so lovely to see everyone's shock and surprise. My daughter is having the best time with her aunts, and they're all so excited to see her in person. I decided to also surprise R, turning up at her house, ringing the doorbell, and seeing the man who aid me was definitely the last thing I was expecting. I assumed by some twisted and cruel coincidence that I got the address wrong, but then I comes to the door calling him babe. It honestly felt like a horrible cliched teen movie where the main protagonist caught her best friend and boyfriend together. I knew she was seeing someone, but said that she wouldn't let me meet them until it was in person. She's my best friend. I had no reason not to trust her. I know that makes me stupid as hell, but I just never could have thought she'd do this. It's been 3 days since then, and she has been blowing up my phone, begging to talk. I finally gave in because, as established above, I'm a moron. She said she was sorry for how I found out about them, and if I could forgive her for falling in love with my ex, which not only made me mad, but also my husband who knows everything this whole ordeal put me through. I cut her off, saying I couldn't have this conversation, especially since my daughter was in the room, and she replied saying something like, well, she'll have to find out about the wedding soon for dress fittings. I asked her what she meant, because there was no way that I heard that correctly, and she said that as her soon-to-be stepmom, she wants her as the flower girl. As we have always said since we were growing up that our kids would be flower girl or ring bearer. I told her in absolutely no way, shape, or form would my daughter be attending that wedding. She said I was being petty and jealous and that I can't stop her real dad from being a part of her life. We've not spoken since this morning on the call, but I'm already receiving messages from our mutual friends saying that I've caused her to break down and ruined her wedding, but I genuinely believe I am not only morally right, but also legally. So, I'm putting my most personal story online and asking you, AITA.
Oh sweet Lord, ma'am, there ain't no way you could possibly be a sidewinder in this story. Morally you're in the right, I wouldn't let your daughter anywhere near that sidewinder. He's not your ex. He's your daggum victimizer. Legally, well, I plumb reckon that y'all's good there too. I mean, the sidewinder did sign away his rights to receive a lesser sentence. Which means, legally, he's no longer her pa. Oh yeah, that would also mean that her is absolutely not your daughter's stepma. Besides, it sounds to me like your daughter already has an amazing father. Well now partners, she calls her a best friend? As they say, with friends like her, who needs enemies? Anyway, what do y'all think she should do? What would you do if you were her? Let me know in the comments. Well, I plumb reckon that's all the time we got today, but if y'all like this here video then please, hit like and subscribe, it'll really make this old cowpoke smile. And if y'all got anything to say, then feel free to tell me what's on your mind down in the comments. Until y'all come back to the Reddit Ranch. Adios.